Yo, 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 yo. Study stream, baby. It's study stream time, boy. I'm gonna have a podcast in the background. Full on studying, bruh. I ain't gonna do no games today. Sorry, chat, but it's all serious. I got tests tomorrow, but I wanna stream it, so I wanna stream the study sesh. Okay. Yo, 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 yo. We're gonna watch other Cray podcast. The Cray podcast. Mm, let's go.
The streets were our rite of passage. It was the gauntlet you go through to become a man. So I didn't know another pathway toward manhood or masculinity. I didn't grow up with doctors and lawyers. I didn't even know we could become those things. I grew up seeing my uncles, my cousins, the guys in the neighborhood, and the people who I was most
go.
influenced by were gangsters, were gang members, were, drug dealers. And so to be like them meant to be a man. And I was probably in my early 30s before I realized, like, this is dumb, but it still was such an intrinsic aspect of my formative years. It took a while to shake it off. They say you'll be what you see, you'll become what
Facts.
you beheld.
Facts.
That's what I saw, and
That's
that's
some
what I
facts, though,
desire
for
to
real.
become. And it takes a moment to get a person out of slavery, but it takes a lifetime to get the slavery out of person. So it was a process.
That's tough.
Of me,
That's tough.
detaching myself from those
That
realities.
is so
and
good.
those
That's a
ideologies.
bar.
People don't like the concept of privilege, or the concept of nepotism, or like, they don't like that concept. But the reality is, it's all throughout our history. It just is what it is. It's like,
Yup, that's facts.
hey,
Facts,
if
though.
your dad is a billionaire, you're by and large going to inherit billions of dollars and become a billionaire. And that's not like, it's just
true,
the
though.
reality.
Yeah.
And so, in the same regard, if your mom was a drug addict, your dad was in and out of jail,
Yup.
the chances are that brokenness is going to lead you
Infiltrate.
toward
Yeah.
a life of being a degenerate. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that's the rule, but to not follow that path is the exception most of the time. And I think people just fail to see that as a reality. We all think that we live on this equal playing field, and everybody is, has the same opportunities and will get through it. And I know that's not true. And the reason why I know it's not true is because I experienced it as a kid, going to hood schools and then getting a chance to go to a suburban school. And in my last
Ooh,
couple years of
so
high
we got to
school,
see
I
both
know it's not
sides.
true. Right? The
Interesting.
stuff that, like, my middle school was on, I believe it was Dateline, for one of the worst schools in America. My mom said, if I see you out here, I'm gonna light you up. But I remember being in class, man. We didn't have to do anything. We didn't learn anything. We just ran amok. Right? I remember
Wow,
it, like,
that's
distinctly.
crazy.
And then I remember struggling when I got to this high school because I wasn't prepared for this. I wasn't prepared. No one taught us this. There was no debate teams and no studying, different languages. It was night and day. So,
Interesting, yeah.
our experiences and what we're exposed to do in many ways shape us and shape the opportunities that we're given. I'll never forget, I moved to Memphis. I was living in a neighborhood called Binghamton. It was a really tough neighborhood. And I was doing a Bible Institute, and some of the leaders in the Bible Institute said, hey, we're going to do this mission trip.
Dope.
And one of the leaders of the mission trip was a part of this Methodist church. and he invited some people over to his house. You know, middle-aged white guy. And so we go to his house, this nice house in the suburbs. You know, I'm coming out of the hood, the home that, you know, we lived in, and
Yeah.
he's taking his sons. And I thought I was so intriguing, you know, as a young guy myself. I saw his sons who were teenagers in high school, you know, a couple, you know, pretty upper middle class white kids. And I said, hey, what's going on, man? We just sparked the conversation. And I was just curious, 'cause I hadn't had much interaction with, you know, white kids, you know what I mean? Like I had a little bit, but not like extensive. So I was just curious. It's like, hey man, like, so what do you want to do when you grow up? And he was like, I'll probably be a doctor like my dad. I remember.
Wow. He
Not
he just
literally, but it
accepted
felt
it.
like my head just fell off my neck. Because I could not fathom being 16 years old and thinking I could be a doctor. Like
So he took it the other way than I
confidence
thought.
He said that way
Interesting.
baffled me. That was his reality. Like I thought in my mind, man, that's got to be the hardest. You're gonna have to work so hard. Like who would ever strive for that? That's just crazy. That could never be a reality. And the quickness and candor he said it with blew my mind because I just had never experienced that. And I knew then
Fair enough.
that his values were my ideals.
Ooh, that's a
And
bar.
that's what
That's a
society does a
bar.
lot of times. Is sometimes your values are other people's ideals. It's like, nah, it's just
I mean,
something I
she's
value.
not
I value a
wrong.
budget.
That's a
Some
bar,
people,
though.
Man, that's the ideal if I
It's a
could budget
bar.
money, but man. But that's just the reality that we live in. As a black
That's
man
true.
in America, you know, there's no one way to be black, right? I think we're not a
Sure.
homogenous people group. It's like, oh, this is the way you're black, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
White people in America are a combination of lots of things. They're a combination of Irish or Italian or Norwegian. And so
Very
if they were to go
odd
back to
ethnicities to
their
choose.
countries of origin, they would, you know, they'd see like, oh, there's different iterations of me being white. And of course,
That's
white
true.
and black are
Yeah.
just constructs that we've created. They're not like real things. They're
I guess.
constructs.
Yeah.
But American culture, I mean, what is there, like 300 million people in America? 40
Really?
million of them are African American. So I'd say at least 100 million to 150 to 200 million of them are probably white Americans.
That makes sense.
A
Yeah.
culture has been created by the dominant or the majority culture. And
Yeah.
that's what happens when there
Yeah.
is a dominant or majority culture.
Yeah. That's just
And so-
what happens. Yeah.
Because of that, you know, the dominant culture will tend to think, well, this is just how you act. When the minority cultures will say, no, that's how y'all act. But there's not a recognition that, oh, this is a culture. This isn't just America. Like, no, that's your iteration of America, your expression of American.
Well, he has a point, but no, sorry. He has a point, and it is true. But to add on to that, whatever there is a majority of, that's what it's going to exist. And that's with any sort of system. So Lecrae is pretty much saying that, oh no, blah, 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 that's not how American acts. That's how y'all act. Well, y'all are the majority, so that's what America claims it is. I mean, you could claim that for any country and say, well, that's how y'all act, but that's not how Israel acts. That's just how the system works. The majority determines what is good and what is okay and what is bad and what is not okay. That's just how it works. You can't really break that society down and say, oh, that's not right. It's just how that works.
And so you say, yeah, America, what's America? Apple pie, baseball, you know, hot dog. No, that's your expression of America. You ask a
Sure.
African American, what's America? Or what's your iteration or your expression? Well, when I travel overseas, what am I missing? I'm missing soul food. I'm missing hip hop culture. You know, there's certain
That's
aspects
true.
that
He's got a
unique
point.
to the African American experience. And so oftentimes, because, you know, white Americans are the dominant ethnic group or cultural group, they don't realize that
Oh,
people
hold
are
on. Let my friends call me, bro. Yo. All right, well, let's go.
assimilating to fit in amongst them. They don't realize that this is not how your Indian friend talks when he gets home. This is not how your black friend talks when he gets home. This is not how your Asian friend talks when they get home. This is them assimilating to fit into the broader culture. And so,
Oh, because that's your, what was it?
what
I
made
see.
me stop doing
That's your Z score.
was when
Okay,
I got
see.
to Atlanta and I saw beautiful expressions of African American culture in different iterations. Atlanta has every kind of black person: punk rock, hip hop,
Well, yeah, because everyone from Africa
intellectual,
goes
like
over to
whatever.
Georgia.
You know, every kind of expression of black American. Whereas in some cities I lived, you were either assimilated or hood. It was just one or the other. And so in order to not be mistaken or thought of as like, oh, you're a hood degenerate, people assimilate and dress like the white people dress and talk like the white people talk in order
Interesting.
to be accepted. And in Atlanta, you can just be yourself as a black person. I don't feel like I want to wear a hat and a chain and no one's like, he's a gangster, he's a thug. They don't know. Or they're not like, he's an athlete, right? Which is what people would think if I were to go to,
That's true.
maybe the middle of Iowa is like rapper,
Middle of
athlete,
Iowa.
gangster, I don't know. But in Atlanta, I have no idea who this guy is. I have no idea. And I think that's the beautiful thing about authenticity is being able to be your full self and to show up as your full self and not have to feel like I have to assimilate to be accepted. Because you don't really see, I mean, you don't see white people, changing the way they dress when they show up to a black event. You don't
That's
see
true.
it, but you will see black people do that. You will see black people change the way they dress.
That is also
you don't see
true.
white people like, oh shoot, I'm going to hang out with my Hispanic friends. Let me develop a more Hispanic lingo. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, there may be like a condescending, what up, dog? You know what I'm saying? Or like, hola, amigos. And then that's it. But yeah, minorities are constantly learning how to assimilate. And that's actually a superpower for us because we know the dominant culture movies, the dominant culture music, but they don't know the minority culture things, right? Except for the things
Well, yeah.
that kind of get popularized and embraced
That's
by
how it
dominant
works.
culture. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I know Shawshank Redemption and I know Top Gun and I know, Taylor Swift, but do you know Mo Better Blues? Do you know Glory or Roots? It's
Huh?
like those are some
Who?
old school joints. But, do you know Frankie Beverly and Maze?
I've
The
heard of them.
staples in black barbecue culture. And so that's just a reality of life that I've learned to navigate. I'll never forget this guy when I was in college. He was a Christian white guy from Kentucky, and he was so adamant about being a part of the African American ministry as a leader. And
Yeah.
he knew his Bible, so they were like, "You want to be minister to African Americans on campus? I mean, shoot your shot." And they let him come around. And what was so dope about him was, he didn't just come in like with the Messiah complex, like, I know Bible that you don't know, let me teach you.
Yeah.
He came in like trying to serve and acted like a real missionary would. I'll never forget him asking me like, what movies you grew up on? What music did you grow up on? And I told him, and he went and listened to it all and watched it all. And then just would dialogue with me about it and find ways to connect those narratives to the
That's
Bible,
some
and
good
I was blown
missionary
away by
skills.
that. Here's
For
the
real,
thing you
though.
got to realize too. What a lot of people don't realize is like, you know, minority cultures, specifically like the black community, we are very community oriented. So we tend to
Yeah,
think in
that makes
terms of
sense.
the collective, whereas like my white friends think in terms of the individual. So my white friends will go to a restaurant
Yeah, to an extent,
and there may
yeah.
be a white guy in there and he's loud and obnoxious, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that guy's so loud and obnoxious. What an idiot. But as black people, if we go to a restaurant and there's a black person in there acting up, we like, man, you embarrassing us. You know, it's a
That is
collective
true.
mindset
That is
because
so true.
we think communally, not individually. And
Yeah,
so for us, it's like, if I got it, you got it. If I'm hungry, you hungry. And you see that in minority communities. You know, you
yeah.
see like the Asian communities where it's like, hey, no, we're going to live together. We're going to own this collectively. So there's just different iterations of it. Whereas I feel like that's what God really desires. I think that's what, we can learn from a lot of Eastern cultures in the West is that intercultural, that cultural, that dependency, that community dependency upon one another, and not rugged individualism. Not like, and for us, the more money we get, the more influence we get, the further
Yeah,
away we want to be from people. I want a house on a hill with a big gate with a lake around it so I don't have to deal with people at all. And the reality is, those are the most miserable people. The happiest people live in close proximity with folks and they have block parties and they know each other and they're hanging out. And so,
that's true. Yeah,
that is one of the beauties. Again, it's why we're a body. We need to learn from each other instead of like thinking like one particular group has all the answers and one denomination has all the answers, just on and on and on. There's so much we can learn from one another. And that's one of the things I love, about like Eastern cultures and communities and cultures and communities below the equator is there's a real sense of community and not like
that's true.
isolation.
Hold my friends calling me again, bro. Yo. Let's go.
And individualism. Oh,
Wait, whoa. Hold
has
on.
all the answers, just on and on and on. There's so much we can learn from one another. And that's one of the things I love, about like Eastern cultures and communities and, cultures and communities below the equator is there's a real sense of
That's a fact.
community and not like isolation and individualism. Oh, yeah. I said if you want to go there, I can go there. And I got story after story, and there's different places I can go. And yeah, I brought up prostitution because, again, it's healing and something that I can talk about. So
And while bro's 45, he has so many stories that he has not told anyone besides his wife. Even his mom, too. Like, he has so many stories. That's crazy. Like, I'm honestly not that surprised that he has a prostitution story, to be honest. Because he grew up in a ratchet town. Grew up with the gangsters. Turned to one of the biggest Christian artists in the world. Like, he definitely has a lot of... Like, he definitely has some good stories, for sure.
I'm gonna refrain from naming names, but I'm gonna give you all some detail. I'll give you a couple stories, but I'll try to condense it. I used to have this really close friend, man, and we were like, man, we were thick as thieves.
Stick and
His
Steves.
uncle had done a lot of time in prison, and
Okay.
he'd gotten out of prison, and you know, used to haunt the strip club, and he would get drunk and be in the strip club all the time, and so we would go and pick him up from the strip club as
Okay.
you know 18 19-year-olds. And so
Yeah.
in picking him up from the strip club, you just frequent it so much, it's not like appealing to you anymore. You start knowing the strippers and just like talking to them, and you know them as like, that's just Teresa, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
not the same like allure. You know the dark backstories, you know the pimps, and you just get in more immersed in the underworld of it and less enamored with it. And so, man, me and my friend would just
Trying to test something. Yeah, wait. Live? I want to watch myself.
find ourselves in these sketches.
What? Stream manager. Wait a second. Wait, can y'all hear it? If I do this, and I go like this, and I go, wait, no. And I go like this. Can y'all hear me? And I go like this. Oh, okay, so it does work. Can y'all hear me? And I go like this. Oh, okay, so it does work.
Places and just dealing with all kinds of characters, and you end up with friends who are strippers and who are prostitutes, and these people become like, it becomes a normal reality. So at one season iteration of my life, I'm dating a girl who works in a strip club.
Okay.
And man, we're talking and I'm just getting a download. So for me, I felt like I had insight on her backstory and what put her in the position she was in, and some
Fair
of her
enough.
personal struggles and some of her own traumas.
Fair enough.
And I found myself like really starting to feel like this was so normal that it wasn't a bad thing. That I'm connected with pimps and strippers and prostitutes, and this is just the circle. And the problem is, it's like olfactory fatigue. It's when you live if you live around a smell so long, you don't smell it anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm around all of this chaos and trauma that it didn't look bad to me. It just seemed normal.
Yep.
And I remember one night, and this is, I don't even think my mama know this story, but it's all good because I've learned and I've grown from it. God is good. But one particular night, man, we had left one strip club, and my friend had hooked up with, this young lady who was a prostitute. And he was like, man, you just gonna sit here? She got a friend.
How many views?
And I was like, you know what?
Only 37K. That's nothing.
Now, I had definitely had a one night stand before. I had definitely put myself in positions where, you know, it was objectifying a woman. But
Yeah.
I don't think my body was willing to shun the reality of the trauma that I was introducing it to. And so
Okay.
I
Interesting.
go into this hotel room with this young lady and we're talking, and eventually she's like, all right, let's get it going. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I cannot. And she's like, what's wrong with you? You got a girlfriend or something? Like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. It was weird. But what I know now through therapy, what I know now through so much is, man, you're talking to a guy who had been molested. You're talking to a guy who used
Ooh.
promiscuity as a badge to cover up trauma and abandonment, as a way to find a sense of love and care. And here I was in a situation where it was like, man, I'm not only objectifying you, but like you embrace it, right? You're not healthy either. You're in a dark place, and here we
Tough.
are, just two people swimming in trauma, and I cannot. I see you as more than that, even though I don't want to acknowledge that in this moment, because the olfactory fatigue is saying, nah, this is just old girl. This is just a moment. This is just a thing. And man, porn stars, prostitutes, they all have to do some kind of separation of what they're doing and their reality in order to go through with it on a regular basis. You see it happen
That's
all the
true.
time. They got to take drugs. They got to create an alter ego, on and on and on. And for me in that moment, my body knew something my brain didn't even know. I didn't know. I was like, I don't know what's going on. But my body was like, you know, there's a book, The Body Keeps the Score. My body was like, this is traumatic. This is trauma. We cannot participate. And, you know, it was weird. It was embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? It's
Well,
like,
yeah.
who does that? Who like has this opportunity and is like, nah, I can't go through with it. And it haunted me. You know, it haunted me for some time.
Would have haunted me
Because I
too.
didn't know what to make of it. Obviously, you know, you're a young dude, you're like 18, 19 years old, and you're like, why am I having issues, you know, with my manhood? So obviously the immature side of me is thinking like, man, I'm less of a man, or on and on. But the other side of me was haunted because it was like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? What does this all mean? And now as I look back on it, you know, I realize, you know, that was a young woman who experienced a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and put herself in a situation, in a circumstance, to use her body as a means of profit and gain, who didn't see her body as valuable as it was.
Mm-hmm.
And here I was, like, co-signing that, tipping my hat to it, saying, yes, that's absolutely right. You are nothing more than, you know, someone to be objectified, and your body is just that. It's like something I could put a quarter in and get what I want and leave. And so my heart goes out to, you know, anyone who thinks less of themselves, who struggle. You know, there's some people out there some ladies out there who are like, man, this is how I pay my bills, and I gotta create this separation in order to survive. My heart goes out to young women like that, because there's been some experiences that have lied to them. There's been some circumstances that have told them that they are only as valuable as, you know, their body will allow them to, you know, accumulate. You know, it's like, I want to earn it with my wealth. You hear it in the music. You hear women objectifying themselves because they're like, oh, this sells, and this is what's going to give me money.
That's sexy read in just a one sentence summary.
You see it in relationships. And then as a Christian, you know, I believe they are valuable. I believe, you know, Paul said your body's a temple. And in the Bible,
Yeah.
a temple is a holy, incredible place that only the priest is allowed to go in. And if the priest wasn't right, he would die
Wow, that was a 15-minute. Wow, that did not like
once he
15
entered.
minutes.
He had to make amends and atone for his sin before he could enter there. So it took a special person to enter that temple. Anyone couldn't enter.
Yep.
And I always want to remind my daughter, your body's a temple. Don't let anybody just enter there. A priest is that place is reserved for a priest.
Yep.
And that's why when you're married, you know, that is your priest. That is that's a holy, sacred moment where now someone is made right and able to enter into the temple of God, quote unquote, but able to enter into your temple.
Yeah.
And it's legit, you know, and to take it a step further, in ancient times, those temples, you know, were filled with prostitutes because they felt as if some kind of way this was symbolic of, you know, it was a form of worship. But that's how Satan twists things, because it is actually a form of worship, but it's a form of worshiping the one true God for what he's joined together, not the worship of self or senses or money or fertility, you know, which is what people use it for. So all that to say, man, I've learned a lot in my seasons, in my time, and that prostitution story that people were hungering for probably is not as salacious as they like it to be, but it demonstrates that, man, we're whole. I mean, that people are valuable. It demonstrates that people have worth, and
That's true.
We're more than our bodies.
Is it ever hard for your wife to know that you've got stories?
My wife is.
That's a very general question. I don't really know if I would answer that because it's such a very perception-esque question.
One of the most gracious people I know. You know, if there's ever a personification of grace and love, it's her. You know, she has been able to see me as a new person, see me in much the same way that the Lord sees me, and not as damaged goods. You know, she's been able to see God redeem somebody and transform somebody, and she's been able to embrace that. You know, and not look at me as my past. You know, it's obviously not something that we just gonna sit around and talk about. Like, hey, let's talk about my wild years. But it is, she does know my story and my history. You know, she sat with me when we first started dating, or when we got serious. And I remember, you know, saying, like, going through my stuff and feeling this conviction, or I don't know if it was a conversation we had or a conversation that I had or a conviction I came to, but I remember us being together and me getting rid of pictures of old girlfriends, you know, and kind of like, I don't know if they were trophies in some kind of way for me, but it was like, man, let me go through this album and just like, yo, I don't need these no more because this is it. I'm done. But there was one picture of the young lady who I had gotten pregnant and had coerced into getting an abortion, and I struggled with throwing that picture away because I just felt like, man, you know, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame surrounding this. And I remember I just broke down crying in front of her, and I got rid of that picture. Not because I was saying, you know, I'm done with these thoughts and these memories, but because I was saying, in some ways, this is me not forgiving myself, me not embracing that God has forgiven me. And by me holding on to that, it was kind of like I just needed to continue looking at it to as some form of self-condemnation, as some form of punishment for what I had done. And she was just so supportive, man. And she was so loving and gracious to me during that time period. And she's continued to be. You know, I do not deserve her at all. But I'm grateful for her, man. And, you know, we thrive because of the authenticity and the honesty.
Good job, wife.
That's what makes us who we are. Yeah, what are we most afraid of?
Good job.
In being vulnerable, we're most afraid of loss. And so
that's
being
tough.
vulnerable and talking to my wife about
he is thinking
my
right
struggles or my issues or my shortcomings or my failures, there's the fear of loss, right? There's a fear that, man, the person I love the most is going to reject me.
True. That's fair.
And, you know, I mean, there's some of us out here who have to face that reality. Like,
Every day.
if you
Yeah.
are confessing to infidelity, or you're confessing to a murder or some, you got some bodies buried. Like, yeah, I mean, that's a reality that you are putting yourself in a position to lose somebody. But
Fair enough.
at the same time, I think it's selfless to say, man, I love you enough to not have a secret life. I love you and value you enough to not
That's
hide
good.
something from you. And
But you know, people say that like Drake is so big that he has to know information that the public doesn't know. That's the same as Lecrae. Like, I feel like he knows stuff that the average Joe don't know, that the average Christian don't know, that the average artist doesn't know. He's speaking so many facts right now that it is impossible for him not to know something that we don't. You know what I mean? Like, it's very weird how he knows all this information, all these factual bars, and then him not know more than the average person.
I'm willing to risk it all, not in a selfish way because I need to relieve myself of this guilt or this shame, but more in a selfless way of saying, you deserve to know the truth, right? You hear people say all the time, I don't want to know. But the truth of the matter is they just want to protect themselves from hurt. But they need to know if that's the type of person that they're with. They need to know if you haven't healed from these particular things because you need healing, and then they can move forward. If a woman shows up in counseling and says, my husband's cheated on me, and, should I divorce him or should I stay? Well, to me, that's not a question of right or wrong for staying or leaving. It's a question of, is it wise? Right? Is this wise?
Smart man.
Is this a man who has
and the eerie music in the back? Ooh, that's tough.
Done this heinous act and is willing to do anything and everything to rectify, to become the healthier version of himself?
Yeah.
Is he by and large been consistent, and this is something that's like, what the heck is going on? Well, maybe it's wise. Maybe it's wise to reconcile and to stay through that. And I would not condemn a woman or a man for saying, nah, I'm gonna stick that out. But maybe this is a person who hasn't grown, who hasn't shown the character or the type of person who would put themselves
Lecrae, you're
in a
speaking
place to
facts,
be vulnerable
bro.
in the future, to be honest, to be transparent, to get help. No, I would say it wouldn't be wise to stay. And I'm not mad at you for leaving either. And so, at the end of the day, your decisions, you got to live with the consequences of some of those decisions, right? When you hurt people.
Yep.
And when you're honest and you're transparent. But you're still not defined by their rejection of you. That is a moment that cost you something. That does not define you. That's not who you are. You're not the person who, got left because of your failure. You're not your failures. Guilt says, I have failed. Shame says, I am a failure. But Jesus says, I've forgiven your failures. So you're going to have to move forward. You don't just stick your head in a hole and live in the ground for the rest of your life. Like, you're going to have to move forward with your life and be who God has called you to be. And that goes for anybody in any circumstance. If you are imprisoned right now because of something heinous that you've done, that's not what defines you. You're going to have to keep moving forward. You got 20 years in prison. You don't get to just hang your head low in prison and say, man, I suck. I did this terrible thing. No, you become who God wants you to be in those walls, and you make the most of it. So I highly suggest being vulnerable. I highly suggest being transparent. I mean, now talk to your therapist and your close circle about what you're divulging and what you're telling, because, it's not like you need to be telling. Yeah, it's not like I need to, babe, I need to tell you I had a weird thought. Like, okay, chill out, bro. Now you're going to stress her out, telling her every weird thing that pops into your brain. That's not helpful for anybody. Get you some better friends. You have that talk with your friends. But things that that you've done or are doing that would be hurtful, yeah, man, come clean.
That's a good episode. Next, for the ad about Macy's.
This is Brad.
I'm gonna kill Aquaman, bro.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, you make me feel lonely. Make me feel lonely out here, boy. I don't like it.
Where you want to go? Because I can go anywhere, and I don't mind talking about it. You want to go hard drugs? I can go hard drugs. You want to go prostitutes? I got a prostitute.
The thing that's so cool about this podcast is it's called Deep End, and he can literally put his song called Deep End in the background of all of his like Instagram reels, his TikToks, anything. YouTube Shorts, he can put a song in the background and automatically have free promotion. Genius.
Where you want to go? Because I can go anywhere, and I don't mind talking about it. You want to go hard drugs? I can go hard drugs. You want to go prostitutes? I got a prostitution story. Gun shootouts? I got shootout stories. You want to go molestation? I got that. You want to go abuse? Physical abuse? I got that. You want to go abandonment? I got that. Where you want to go?
Oh, and then it merges to the actual video audio. That's clean.
I don't want to be known for my flaws, but let me tell you something. People grow more from the suffering you share with them
Okay.
than the wisdom you hurl at them.
Ooh, that's fire! Oh my gosh! Oh my goodness! Oh my gosh! That is so clean. Hold on. Go back.
I don't want to be known for my flaws, but let me
Yep.
tell you something.
Okay.
People grow more
Yep.
from the suffering you share with them than the wisdom you hurl at them.
Oh my goodness. That is clean as what?
with Lecrae.
Oh my goodness. And then a song? Jeez, man.
What makes you feel uncomfortable to be vulnerable like that?
What makes me feel comfortable being vulnerable has probably little to do with my disposition or like just some kind of innate quality
Hello, mister. How's it going?
within me. It has more to do with time and being able to practice this with close friends in close proximity. Some friends of mine said, let's start an accountability group. And for me, I didn't understand that concept. What is accountability? What is an accountability group?
I don't
But I
understand.
went with it. You could lie if you wanted to. But what I found is that, you know, lying about what is damaging you does not benefit you. It actually hurts you. It's like lying about having a deadly disease. It doesn't benefit you in any kind of way to lie to yourself and to others. It's like, why would you go around pretending you don't have a deadly disease that is going to eventually catch up to you and kill you? But a lot of us don't want to know what's wrong with us, because if we know what's wrong with us, then we have to deal with it, or we don't have the emotional capacity and categories to deal with what's actually hurting us.
Yep.
And so
Facts.
for many folks, it's easier to just keep walking through that. And I just got tired of it. You know, other thing you got to remember for me is I grew up with a mother who was like an investigator. You know, my mom just, you couldn't pull the wool over her eyes. I remember coming home with my cousin high out my mind, and she just took one look at me and knew I was high. And it wasn't like you've been smoking weed. It was more of oh, I'm gonna mess with you. I'm gonna have a field day with this one. She starts playing spooky music and putting her fingers in my face. And so I lived in this space with my mother who she just was not easily fooled, and there wasn't no pulling the wool over her eyes. And so I distinctly remember, you know, being a promiscuous young teenager and contracting something that is curable. Thank you, Jesus. But then I went to the doctor, and I tried to go to the doctor behind her back. Well, where did they send the letter? To the house. Okay, my mom sees a letter from the doctor. Like, why does he have a letter coming from the doctor? When has he been to the doctor? So she's gonna
goodness.
open it, and she did, and she's like, "What is this?" So now I'm like busted out, and it's like
Yeah.
it's doubly embarrassing that your mom knows you're out here, just freelancing and getting
That's the way of putting
nasty
it.
and naked in high school with everything moving, and then too, you caught a sexually transmitted disease in the process of it, and so it's
Yeah, so
like,
it's just
man, I'm
double
on Front Street
embarrassment.
immediately.
Yeah.
So I think I just had been down this road so many times. I've been exposed so many times that it got to a point where, man, I'm just tired of hiding. You get tired of it. You get burnt out.
Facts.
People hide and are not vulnerable because they're afraid of what they'll lose, right? And there's real loss in our society for being vulnerable, for being transparent, right? You
Yep.
do stand to lose, loved ones, the respect of others, jobs, money, careers. You stand to lose from
A
being
lot.
transparent or
Yep.
being vulnerable or being honest. But the
Boo boo, you're on my stuff. Thank you. Hold on, chat. Oops. You're sitting on my stuff, mister. How's your eye doing? Doing pretty good. Yeah. All right, let's go. I can up my food. Let's go.
The unique thing is, as a Christian, right?
Yep.
My hope, my identity should no longer be grounded in what I own, what I have, who I'm with. My identity is found in being known by the creator of the universe. My purpose is not something that I achieved. My purpose was received from God. And now I'm supposed to be in this community of people who accept me unconditionally, right? Who will walk with me, and I am no longer at risk of losing their love or their respect, because no matter what I have going on, these people have committed to be with me.
Okay. Yep.
And so when you taste that in real time, you don't have to be afraid. The problem is most Christians haven't tasted that. They haven't put themselves in a position to be fully integrated with other folks who will embrace them unconditionally. We're still at a place where we're embarrassed for whatever reason to talk about how much money's in our account. Why? Because we think our worth is intrinsically connected to how much money we have.
Yep.
Like, that's what's your
Yep,
net
facts.
worth, as if that's my literal worth. And so we don't want anyone to know how much money we have, how much money we make, how much money we get, because we don't want anyone to think less of us or to have a preconceived idea of who we are.
Or bias,
I share how much money's in my account with my friends, with my close circle. You know why? Because I want accountability, because I want to make sure I'm stewarding what I have correctly, not because there's something for them to judge, or not because I'm somehow more valuable than them, but because, man, I want people to know and people to challenge me based off of what I have going on. So when you're outside of that Christian community, that authentic, integrated community, and maybe you're not, maybe folks aren't Christian, but they still have an integrated community, right? Like, there's people who don't exist in Christian circles. They are still more integrated than some Christians are. And integration just means, man, I'm connected to you in such a way that what you do is not who you are. Your actions are not your identity. Your actions are just things that you've done. And so for me, I'm always wanting to encourage people and challenge people to not view themselves and their worth by what they own, by what they have, by what they've done, but literally understand that, man, they've been made in the likeness and the image of God, and their worth is eternal.
Imago Dei.
And so, you know, I could go on and on. We can go a different way with this altogether, but at the end of the day, people don't realize that their worth is not what other people think about them. And I say it all the time, and I'll say it again: if you live for their acceptance, you die from their rejection. At the end of the day, people don't realize that their worth is not what other people think about them. And I say it all the time, and I'll say it again: if you live for their acceptance, you die from their rejection. And people are just scared of rejection. Historically, when I think of
Hold on. Oh, I can't clip that. That was a bar and a half. Oh, hold on. All right, let's go.
All
Let's
the
do it.
major pastors who fall in, the people who are, you know, leaders in high positions, from, you know, mega church pastors to Dr. Martin Luther King. I think that along the line, they were concerned with keeping up the front, with keeping up the face. And some of them may have felt like, I have good reason, right? Oftentimes it's like, well, if I fail, the movement fails, right? If I fall, everything that
That's tough.
I'm leading falls, which is actually arrogant on our part, right, as leaders, because we think that we're the foundation when God is actually the foundation of it. And so there was a time period in my life where I felt that way, where I felt like I'm the face. I can't fall. I can't afford to mess up or to be exposed. And little by little, God just had to remind me, it didn't start with you, it doesn't end with you. You know, this is
Facts.
a movie,
Facts.
right? Life is a movie. You're not the main character. You're hardly an extra.
Ooh.
You're hardly an extra. And by the
Tough.
grace of God, I'm giving you more opportunities to play a part in this grand film called History. But it doesn't start with us. It doesn't end with us. It's not as if the exposure of our frailty and our humanity somehow messes up God's plans. I think our problem, specifically as, you know, Westerners, as Americans, is we love to villainize people and lionize people.
Yep.
And
Okay.
no individual is as heroic as we make them out to be, nor are any villains as villainous as we make them out to be. I mean, when you look at our movies, you know, we love a good hero. We don't really love a flawed hero. We want a hero
That is
who's
true,
got it all
actually.
right and all perfect,
Yeah.
and has got it together. Historically, we have. We like them now a little flawed, but historically, we loved just picture perfect heroes. And I think the problem is no human is. We're very nuanced, right? Some of us are really jacked up and really amazing. Dr. Martin Luther King is one of my favorite characters. Period. We know he was flawed, right? When you really start digging into his history, it's like, man, the man battled depression. Mahalia Jackson had to sing to him for him to get out of the bed. We know he wrestled with infidelity. You know, we know that he struggled with, you know, the acceptance of certain audiences. But at the same time, he was amazing. He was well-read, studied, was, you
That's
know,
true.
firm on some amazing convictions. And he literally transformed the way that our society functions in America. And so you can't lionize him as this picture perfect person, and you cannot villainize him as someone who's unworthy of our admiration or respect. And I think a lot of us fall in that category. And I fell there until I realized I'm neither. I'm both fearfully and wonderfully made and deeply loved by God, and I'm also more wretched than I even understand, right? I'm more sinful than I am, broken than I even understand. And that's what makes me human. And so that's all of us. Christian leaders have to stop positioning themselves as gurus. We're not gurus, man.
Oh, facts.
We're not icons who have all the solutions. And you start positioning yourself as those type of people, people are going to lift you up only to find your flaws and tear you down.
Yep.
It's the way we're positioning ourselves, especially like we live in a very, you know, extroverted society. We exalt the extrovert. Most of us aren't extroverted. You know, most of us are chill. We don't want to be the loudest person in the room and hey guys, welcome everybody. But that's the caricature that we portray in society. So everyone feels like they have to fit that mold. We got to stop it, right? We're not happy all the time gurus who are just full of just, you know, excitement and passion and I know how to sell you on something. That's not who we are. We're far more dynamic than that. And the leaders that I think demonstrate the most health are the leaders who can acknowledge their own brokenness, acknowledge where they struggle, who can publicly articulate, hey, this is an area that I'm not well versed in. I remember, and it's not to say Paris is like better, but I do remember doing a tour of Paris And as I'm going through Paris, I'm looking at their monuments and stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, this is where these people were brutalized, and this is a statue commemorating all the damage done to these folks. And I was like, oh wow, y'all are just acknowledging where you went wrong in society. And I think America is so young, and it's been little brother that is fearful of showing its flaws. It's fearful of saying, well, here's where we messed up, because we don't want anyone to look at us and say, ooh, right?
That's the problem with America is we're too sensitive. If I say I don't like LGBTQ, well, I get canceled. Or I don't like Christian rap, you get canceled. Or I don't like white women, you're canceled. Like, people are too sensitive. We're way too sensitive on topics that shouldn't really matter. Like, we're way too picky on things. We think if you don't like this, it's absolute fact. It's like God's absolute opinion, or in fact, even though it's just our opinion. It's just, that's not how that works. And he's right. We have to just show our flaws, and I guess that's what God does too.
Right. I said it in Still in America, you know, we hide the areas that we've gone astray instead of acknowledging them openly.
Yeah.
You know, we'd rather take it out of the history books instead of leaving it there to
Yep.
learn from.
Facts.
And I think that's obviously, we don't want to highlight. No one wants to have their flaws highlighted all the time. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to be known for my flaws. But let me tell you something. People grow more from the suffering you share with them than the wisdom you hurl at them.
Ooh, that's a bar and a half. Baby. Ooh.
So share your sufferings, your flaws, your struggles. They grow more from your struggles than because they feel like, man, I can connect with you in a real way versus you're too perfect for me. I remember this. I remember working at Kroger, and I was a cashier. And, you know, it was a suburban Kroger. They paid so well. And I remember working in there, and I
Paid
felt
so
so
well.
like I didn't fit. You know, like I couldn't be myself, because everyone who came in was somebody out of my cultural context. And so when they came in, you know, hey,
Fair
how
enough.
you doing today? Oh, da 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 da. And it's just a face. It was a face. But every
Yep.
so often, somebody will wander in from like a little more of a tougher background or a rougher part of town or something. And, you know, maybe they came from the hood or the trailer park, and they came in there just to buy a pack of cigarettes, and they had visible tattoos. And something in me just sighed like, oh, a real person, right? Like, I can be myself. Because for me, what it said was they're not afraid to show themselves, the candid version of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Smoking's not okay. It's not, I mean, it's not a healthy thing, but they were like, look, it's not healthy, and I know it. I'm buying cigarettes, right? It was like, hey, these visible tattoos are not the status quo, especially back when I was a teenager, but I got them, and I'm not afraid to show them. I respected that because I knew what I was dealing with. I knew who was in front of me. There wasn't a mask or a veneer. It was, hey, this is who I am, raw and real. And it endeared me toward them. And I think that's what vulnerability and transparency does for folks. It endears folks towards you.
It's funny that you still remember that Kroger as paying well in Lionheart.
Yeah, what did it say?
Oh shoot, yeah, man. You know, you get to suburban grocery stores, man. You just drive your car. You know, you got to go to the nice. It's like trick or treating. You go to the nice neighborhood to go trick or treating. You don't stay in the bad one. You know what I mean? So you go
Yep.
find you a job at the nice Chick-fil-A or the nice Kroger or Publix or whatever it is, you know, that's gonna be a better paying situation for you. I feel like our society is just set up for us to be overly concerned with, you know, what people think of us. And obviously I fall into that trap. I fall into it every day, right? It's why I don't get too caught up in social media. It's why I try to post and move on out the way so that I'm not too caught up in who's looking at it, who's not looking at it. You know, because it's dopamine fix for us all. We all want to be accepted, and social media, the masterminds behind social media platforms know that about us. We want acceptance, right? We want to be movie stars and TV stars and social media influencers. We want to win at being valuable, and you know, we're afraid of flaws messing up our value. But the truth of the matter is, being yourself, we all need to grow. We all need some therapy, I'm sure, but you'll never have to worry about keeping up the facade or keeping up the face or wondering if they really like you or they like this idea of you if you're yourself. I used to micromanage the way I presented myself. I literally, like, the way I spoke around people, the way I looked, the way I communicated, just let me just charm their socks off so that I can be embraced by them, so that I can advance in whatever kind of way I wanted to. And, you know, I remember a couple different scenarios. They say you end up marrying, you know, like your mom if you're a guy or your dad if you're a girl. They say that happens sometimes. I definitely think in some senses, like the character of my mother exists in my wife. They don't care. They're just not overly concerned with what everyone else thinks about them. That is a waste of their mental energy. And I remember being a kid, we had moved. So we stayed in the urban environment all the time. You know, I stayed in the hood. I stayed in areas that were, you know, predominantly black. I went to hood schools, and my mom remarried, and we moved to a nicer neighborhood my last 2 years of high school. And so now I got these girls, these black girls who speak the king's English, so to speak. You know, they're articulate, and they're coming over to visit, and I'm introducing them to my mom. And it was the first time I was ever embarrassed of my mom's like soulful Houston accent, you know? And so these girls are coming over like, hey, how you doing? I'm going to Hampton. I'm going to Howard. It's nice to meet you. Da da da. My mom's like, hey girl, how you doing? You know, what's your name? Where you stay? Where your mama from? Hey, how you doing? I'm going to Hampton. I'm going to Howard. It's nice to meet you. Da da da. My mom's like, hey girl, how you doing? You know, what's your name? Where you stay? Where your mama from? And I was like, oh no, mom, no. We gotta come off like we're from this. We gotta come off like we're cut from this cloth. I'm a college kid, you know, and it was stupid, right? Because it wasn't really who I was when I let my hair down, right? That wasn't actually who I was when I let my hair down. My wife, the same way, I used to micromanage her. Don't say that, say this, don't do that, do this, look this way. Let me only post pictures of you that are very complimentary, you know, like not.
Yep.
You know, and that's too much. It stresses her out. She's like, what? This is dumb. How come I can't just show up as me? Am I not enough? And what I found is people love her authenticity.
Facts. But I think I'm gonna end chat. I gotta do some schoolwork and then I'm gonna play with my dog soon. So see ya.